Hello, welcome to this video on how to create an omni-channel or buy online pickup in the store presence. It's presented by the Wizard of Pause. For thousands of years, retail was dominated by brick and mortar stores. You had to physically go into the store to buy things. And eventually they built a traditional support system to handle that with all of the databases and like. Then along came this web. And they thought it was a temporary thing, and it was so different from traditional that they needed to set up its own ecosystem. And so they became parallel rather than integrated. And that became a real problem when omnichannel took over, where people were able to buy things on the web and pick them up in the store. At this point, they started realizing that the data model and the applications for both of them are virtually identical. The user interface is the primary difference between the two. Solve this problem and merge the two into a single system and handle it properly so that people can stay focused in what the world needs to do. I created this IVRO model for Interactive Virtual Unified Retail Model. It's basically a closed loop system that starts with the strategy of the company. It ties the strategy through various value streams to the business processes needed to support that strategy, through the people and organization needed to support that process, on into the information, the data, if you will, to support the entire process, and back to the business intelligence used to measure the success of that effort, tied back to the strategy. This closed loop model gives them the ability to tightly manage what's going on rather than trying to guess. So we'll work our way around the loop, starting with the business strategy and tactics. Here's a couple of sets of strategies that apply to buy online, pick up in the store. In other words, being able to attract new customers using this, incite existing customers to come in more frequently, cross-sell and upsell strategy, that's huge, and being able to keep them, retain them. And then you want to be able to improve the profitability of the various operations. So once you've identified the strategy for your company, you want to move around the loop to the business architecture component where we identify value streams. And here's a BOPIS value stream in the business architecture world. Basically, customer searches the manufacturer's website, they pick items, they order items, and then they get them shipped to them or they go pick them up. So we'll look at one of the value streams, the customer order items value stream. And in it, there are these three capability maps. These are capabilities that are needed to run this. And here we've got a channel management capability, a customer management, and a point of sale management, all necessary to support this particular value stream. So we will explore what's under the customer management capability map. There are sets of capabilities. What does it mean? What are the preferences? What's the risk associated with this? How do you authorize them or authenticate them? Do you communicate with them back and forth? What is in their portfolio? Are they matching with other customers? Information management is the database, if you will. Customer access management, and finally, customer relationship management. All different kinds of capabilities that can apply to this particular capability map. So now we understand the value stream and the various capabilities that can be associated to the value stream. Let's move around to the business process necessary to support that. And in this case, we've got the manage orders process. So when we drill down to the manage order process, we end up seeing this rather complex ecosystem for managing the orders, starting with the channel it started in, what sort of processing, who do you route it to for fulfillment, how do they pay for it? Do you do an analysis on it? How about marketing the thing or merchandising the thing? All parts of the business process associated with selling an item. And if we want to drill down even further, we can start to see the swim lanes associated with the business process of selling an item. There's lots of different pieces. We're going to go through them all. But one of the interesting things is that in this model, you see the enterprise architecture or the information necessary to communicate between the various processes. So now we kind of understand the business processes associated with it. Let's look a little bit at the business organizational area. In this case, we're looking at some logistics functions. So freight, how do you move the thing? What are the shipping requirements, et cetera? What are the receiving and distribution requirements? And what are the basic warehouse functions for storing this stuff when it does come in terms of picking and putting? So how do you make it all seamlessly work? Well, in version 4 of the ARTS data model, released in around 2004, they used this CQRS model for command query responsibility segregation. So the CQRS model is a design pattern that states that when we can, and sometimes should, separate data, update versus data querying into two separate models. Data altering operations should be in a different methods separated from the methods performing the read-only operation. CQRS takes this concept a step farther, instructing us to use entirely different models for updates versus queries. So each individual transaction is an event. They come in and they update one model. Each of them creates their own line item in this updated model. So now we have a history of each transaction that occurred throughout the store. Then the query model takes and summarizes those up so that you have a current state, which is the summary of all of the individual transactions. So this is how that's implemented in the retail technology standards world. We start with building a shopping basket. It's just a list of the items that you put inside your basket. If we want to save them, we embed them in an order transaction, which is the container of all of the items in the shopping basket. And you can save that off and use it to come back later if you want to come back and look at something else. Otherwise, you get converted into a customer order transaction. And now we're looking at the individual transactions that were created in the CQRS model. These are handled independently in the POS log schema for messaging to communicate that to the backend systems. Each of these customer order transactions get stored in the data model as a customer order control transaction. So again, we have each one and we have the full history of what has transpired. The customer order control transactions get summarized into a customer order or a payment on account. Now they separated the payment on account because of the sheer volume of information associated with payments, and they didn't want to necessarily duplicate that. You can go back and you can change and update things along the whole path. And eventually, when they tender payment on account and receive the customer order, the transaction is complete and it can now be accounted for in your financials, and it gets converted into a retail transaction. This is all stored inside the data model, all of these types of things. But in addition, POS log has a retail transaction for communication of the end result of this to other systems in the environment that need information on what's happened with this particular sale. So now we have the information we need. Let's move around to the business intelligence so we can tie it back. And here there's just one of the BI KPIs that is in this presentation, but there's a whole host of them. This one is simply the one on net sales. So you can now communicate what was sold back to see if it ties to the strategy and if the strategy was successful. This is the extensive library of ARTS work. ARTS created over 7 blueprints. Now these blueprints are in effect requirement stocks that helped us drive the creation of the other standards. In the process of building them, we created a lot of design documents such as task state diagrams. On top of that, we integrate with other standards group. For example, there's a payment standards body out there, and we have a payment integration report to tell how to integrate to that effort.
We've written best practices reports because we wanted arts standards to be standard, and so we use these to help guide the development of our work. There are over 29 different message schemas in the arts inventory. These cover the lines on that spaghetti diagram we showed to begin with. There's over 40 different devices covered in the Unified PAWS standard. The newest one of those is a robot standard, and it's not covered in the book, but it's the newest standard. The data model. Of course, the data model is where we all began. There is one operational data model that today covers the entire enterprise. It has over 800 tables in it and 8,000 attributes. On top of that, there's a data warehouse model with 3 data marts in it. We help retailers buy these applications by writing a set of requests for proposals. These are so effective that the first one was the point of sale RFP, and the first retailer who got that out, they figured that they got it accomplished in 12 man days, and they saved over $100,000 by using this standard. The total of these represents somewhere between 15 and 20,000 attributes and elements. They cover over somewhere around 90% of the operational side of retail. This is overwhelming. So how do I find out about this information? In one case, I train people all over the world about how this works. The number of retail stores represented by this training exceeds over 100,000 stores. In addition, you can learn a lot of this in this book, Arts for Retail.
And that brings us full circle. So I want you to know that I love to share my knowledge, as indicated by all of the various YouTube videos that I've created. Please contact me to help you with your retail problem, be it a training problem, an architectural problem, the development problem. I am the Wizard of PAWS. My name is Richard Halter. My email is richard.halter@cox.net. I have a YouTube channel, as you know, where this video is located. I have a blog. I have a couple of self-paced courses that I've written. And on top of that, I have an Arts for Retail book that helps explain a lot of this stuff. So thank you again for listening to my video.